Were you involved with Just Cause in '89? Did you go to Panama?
I did. Yeah. So it's funny because I was a corporal, I was a team leader, and we were training up for it. But you don't really understand. Again, when I went to, I think it was the 20-year anniversary of the Panama invasion. I went to this briefing, and it was all us old timers, and I see a map, and it was the very first time that I realized the airfield we jumped in on, called Tacumen, was absolutely on the other side of the country of Rio Hato, where Second Ranger Battalion jumped. Because when we did rehearsals, you were in Florida doing the rehearsals, and we jumped there, and so in my mind's eye, the other battalion wasn't that far away. And then on the day of combat, when you're doing your fighting and you're hearing this other fighting, I'm thinking it's a whole nother battalion. Well, it must have been another platoon or company. You just didn't understand the scale and scope of it, or even the strategy, right? Like, I had no idea that we were marching towards war. We were just training and training. I'm a 20-year-old corporal. I've got four dudes that I need to have ready, and we had just completed a full rehearsal in Florida, like a full mock-up. So I think if I would have been a little smarter, I would have recognized that, hey, we were on the precipice of something. But we had block leave. You only get block leave at Christmas once every 3 years, because it would rotate between the first, second, and third Ranger battalions. So we had Christmas block leave, and my wife, Julianne, who we got married that year in April. We were going home to have a public wedding in December. So I was focused on one thing: Christmas and getting married. And when the phone call came on that Sunday night, and I don't know if you'll remember this at all. You're much younger than I am. It was the Simpsons Christmas special. It was an hour long special of the Simpsons, and it was like the first time the Simpsons had like a premiere thing. And back then you had the three or four TV stations. So I mean, the entire country sat down to watch the Simpsons Christmas special, and the phone rings, and it's my squad leader. He gives us the alert notification. I kiss my wife goodbye and head into work, having no idea where we're going or what it is we're up to. And then a couple days later, I find myself jumping out of an airplane and landing in Panama.
When your feet hit the ground coming out of that plane, or maybe even before your feet hit the ground, and the parachute's deployed and you're coming down, you got your weapon, you got your ammo, your guys are hopefully around you. Do you remember what you were thinking falling through the air?
Oh yeah, exactly. Because it's not like you just described it. There was nobody around me. So it was pretty dicey. So you're coming in on the aircraft, and it was raining when we left Hunter Armour Airfield. So we were soaking wet. And then you're in these aircraft, and you're wet and you're cold. And as you're coming in, the aircraft started to take fire. So they were bobbing and weaving. I have terrible motion sickness to begin with, but the movement of the aircraft, you just wanted to get out. Like, all of us were just, get us out of here, and you're waiting, you're standing in the stick, the doors open up, and you can feel that warm Caribbean air come in, and you're waiting for the light to turn green. So people that don't know, this is me holding a static line. If you don't know what this is, there's a line connected to my parachute, and it's on a cable, and you walk, and you hand it to the jump master, and you jump out the door. So as you're walking, you wait for the light to turn green, and you start hustling and hustling, hustling. And I didn't realize it at the time, but there were men in the aircraft getting shot. Guys were falling down. And I thought, this is ridiculous. How many times have we trained to jump? Now is the time you decide to trip and fall in front of everybody. But we just stepped over them and jumped out the door. And as soon as I hit the wind, it was very, very warm. I saw A-10s like at eye level, and I was shocked. I'm like, oh my goodness, there's an airplane, a jet. And your chute opens almost immediately. And I'm trying to orient myself. And this goes back to what I was saying before. I didn't know where I was, because everything on the mock-up, an airplane hangar was maybe a 20 by 20 plywood building that we created in the rehearsal. You know what I mean? So in the air, I could see the entire objective during training, during the rehearsal. But when I jumped out, I'm looking around like, I don't know where I am. What's happening? And there's bullets flying, there's tracers, there's red and green tracers, and they're bouncing all over the place. And I'm even thinking to myself, now I'm controlling this is me doing controlling the parachute. I'm thinking, what color are our tracers? Are they red or green? Are these people shooting at me? What's happening? And that was about all I thought. And then you hit the ground because you jumped from very, very low. And as soon as you hit the ground, everything becomes quiet because there's this giant elephant grass that's around you. And you hear gunfights happening around you and you see bullets flying around, but you are all alone. And I think it's interesting because I've talked to old World War II veterans as well, even like D-Day, as big as that was, when you land in the dark in the woods or in a field, it's very quiet. And even if a guy's 30 meters away, nobody's saying anything, so you feel very, very alone. And then I policed up my stuff and as a team leader, my job was to get to that assembly area, get a team ready, and go get the foothold that we needed. And it was interesting because we had been practicing it, but I was really wondering who was going to be there. Because as soon as you had, I think it was 6 to 8 men and a machine gun, you were heading out to take the foothold of this building. And you're used to fighting with your guys. So as I'm moving to the assembly area, I'm thinking, man, I sure hope my guys show up because I don't necessarily want to have my first gunfight with dudes I really don't know. And then we had these clickers. So I think that was similar to what they had in D-Day. It was a little clicker that you would click as a near recognition signal. And then we also had a running password that was Bulldog. So as I'm running to the assembly area and there's all these gunfights happening around me and I'm making the decisions of, should I go get in a gunfight? Do they need my help or what's my job? You're constantly trying to figure out what should I be doing right now? There's so much happening. Should I go with the plan? You know what I mean? Or should I bend to what I see happening around me? And then you get this kind of, I got at least this somewhat paranoid feeling of, everyone's watching me and there's someone to come get me. And I started just yelling, not yelling, but saying Bulldog. So I think every time my left foot hit the ground, it was almost like a cadence. I was like, Bulldog, Bulldog, Bulldog. And then finally I heard someone else say Bulldog, and that changed everything. I mean, it's you hear people talk about it, man, fighting alone sucks. Fighting with one other guy is a world of difference. So I don't even remember who it was that I linked up with. I don't think I knew him, but now I at least had a buddy. And by the time I got to the assembly area, there weren't many guys there. And within probably just a handful of minutes, I had the team that I needed to go, and we headed on out.
Man, I wish people knew more about Panama because what you just described could have been in the Band of Brothers episode where they jump into D-Day. Guys are getting shot in the plane. They had the clicker. They said grasshopper.
Yeah.
And they wanted to alert each other where they were. That's nuts. I did not realize. When I interviewed a former teammate of yours at the unit who was also in Panama, he described a very chaotic scene as well. In fact, he said that he saw a body drop from a rooftop that the guy behind him had shot. He missed the guy. The guy was looking right down at him. And someone behind him, and he's like, I'm lucky to be alive because that guy had me dead to rights. I didn't even see him. But Panama seems to be this thing that everyone just kind of, especially young people, maybe my age, just completely breeze over like it never even happened. And the other thing I'd bring up is Operation Acid Gambit. When they got Kurt Muse out of the prison, that's one of the most incredible rescue missions imaginable. Most people have no idea that even happened.
Yeah. And as a Ranger corporal, I had no idea it happened. I had no idea what else was going on, and it is funny because I find myself talking more about Panama than most other events. One, it's because like by the time you get to Delta, man, it is so sophisticated. I mean, it is like it's like the most high-speed movie stuff you can imagine. Like, it's almost hard to describe. But the Panama thing, like you said, it's kind of the warfare people understand. You parachute in, you do this, you do that. One of the things that's funny when you talk about it was forgotten. I finally came home end of January or something like that. Needless to say, my wife and I did not have our wedding. So here's a little piece. My wife didn't know where we were going, and how I found out what we were doing. It was on CNN. So I say this often, like the media isn't that different than it ever has been. They've never really been on our side, right? They want the scoop. So we came in off of this alert, and we were getting all of our gear ready, and we were like, where are we going? I don't know. What are we doing? Flip TV on, CNN saying, hey, the 82nd Airborne and the Ranger battalions have been alerted and are planning to invade Panama. I think this was like Monday, and we didn't jump in until Tuesday, you know? So the intel reports were coming in. The Panamanians knew we were coming, and they started reinforcing the drop zone and tearing up the airfield. And they had a good 24, 48 hours of building a solid defense because the Western news media tipped them off. You know, so when we actually went, I think my wife said they called all the women, all the wives into the chapel and said, initially that it was a training exercise. You know what I mean? Like, don't worry, it's a training exercise. And then it's on TV, and some wife raises her hand and she's like, what is this bullshit? It's on TV. And then they were like, well, give us a minute. And they come back and are like, okay. Your husband's just spearheaded the invasion into Panama. So what had happened for me was I hadn't talked to my wife from Sunday night, which I think was whatever day that was. And we were supposed to be married on the 24th of December. And so Monday we were supposed to go on leave, et cetera, et cetera. So in the lull of the fighting, we were going through a barracks, and we hit this day room, which is there's a bar and there's a refrigerator and there's a disco ball, and it's the room where the soldiers just chill. We have them, they had them, and I saw a phone, and I said, hey, hold up here, guys, hold up here a second, and I picked up the phone and I called my wife, Colette, and I said, honey, I don't really have a lot of time to talk, but you need to call my mom and let her know there's not going to be a wedding. Like, if you don't know where we are, you're going to find out real soon. You need to call my mom. So again, people don't think of this back in 1989. So Jules calls my mom, and my mom does her best to cancel the wedding, but there was no email. It was, we had push button phones and answering machines, but that was about the only technology. My mom still had the rotary phone, that, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? That joke that says, any friend who had a 9 or a 0 in their phone number, you just got rid of them. It was too hard to give them a call. So people came to the church still. They didn't get word that it was canceled. People came to the reception still. They hadn't got word that it was canceled. So it seems like such a different time, almost World War II type stuff, right? And then finally, when I did come home in January or February, I remember seeing some friends, and I asked a girl that I had gone to high school with. She asked me what I had done for Christmas. I said, "Oh no, I was in Panama. I didn't really have a Christmas." And it went right over her head. And she said, "Oh, I love Panama City. That's my favorite place to do spring break." And it was the first time that I realized this disconnect, right? Like, this world that I live in and the world that the rest of America lives in. And I'll admit there were times I was resentful, especially, going back and forth to war. Like when people lost their appetite for Afghanistan, when people lost their appetite for Iraq, when people don't even understand these other things that we're doing. And I'd come home and I'd see a yellow ribbon on a tree or a yellow ribbon on a pole. I sometimes I got resentful because people just went about their day, But now that I'm a little bit older, I'm glad and proud that we live in a country that we can send men and women to war and still have a peaceful life where everything just kind of runs itself. And that's what it was. I mean, I was back and forth to war from 2003 until I retired in 2015, probably half the time at war. So you just kind of get used to it.